in episode 1, Godfather of Hollywoodland.
People everywhere were trying to sell you this sweet Southern California dream, Hollywoodland. The imagination of real estate investors, the partnership was hemorrhaging cash. A very aggressive PR campaign. They were gonna need someone to babysit this sign 24 hours a day. Albert Kota, a German immigrant from Hamburg, Germany. Albert worked tirelessly to keep up the facade. Residents of Hollywoodland had a lot to be frightened of. This was a quiet canyon. It was gonna stay that way.
1932 Olympics at Los Angeles. The scene is the Coliseum, and the world's outstanding athletes are here.
Carol is considered lucky, getting out of the market just in time. She's planning a trip out west for the Olympic Games. Her husband, James Edward Charles Royal Flush III, planned to stay at a new Ritz-Carlton opening in the Hollywood Hills. They're looking at buying a second home. Carol knows the nation's in crisis. She's rich, just doesn't care.
There would be no Ritz for the Olympics. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel, which would have been the first on the West Coast, the deal was canceled. Back up at the shack, Albert worked tirelessly. He had his own problems to deal with. The uninvited visitors that came around the clock at all hours of the evening to bask in the glow of hope that radiated from the Hollywoodland sign. Albert was told to do something about it, and he did. But the gate wouldn't stop a frustrated young actress. Her career just wasn't going the way it should be. She was just shooting all over herself. She climbed all the way to the top of the H, jumped to her death. She walked all the way from Beechwood Market all the way to the H. But when you've had a few drinks in you, you can walk a long distance. The Hollywoodland team folded up shop. The sign went dark. Albert was jobless. What was he going to do now? This was the middle of the Great Depression. I mean, they didn't call it great for nothing. Who was going to take him in? Who was going to hire the chauffeur laborer? Rumors began swirling. First, they said he took up residence behind the first L. Then they said during a wicked bender, he drove off the ridge and plowed right into the letter H. Lastly, strapped for cash, Albert would rip out all the copper wiring and sell it from scrap, giving them the middle finger. You go, Albert. Someone came to Albert's rescue, a fellow German immigrant by the name of Leslie Milton Wolfe, otherwise known as Bud. I don't know why they didn't just call him Milt, but Bud we shall call him. Bud was a colorful character, and he named his home Wolfe's Lair, but the neighbors had a different name for it, the Hitler House. Neighbors can just be so nasty. When Bud and his beard of a wife suddenly lost their infant son, he hired Albert as his full-time caretaker and a handler for his exotic pet gibbon. I didn't even know what this animal was. It's some kind of monkey. I guess that's just what people did in the 20s. I mean, if you couldn't drink, just get a crazy monkey. Can they do dishes? Where could I get a gibbon? Let's talk about the Hitler House for a second. It had some questionably cool amenities like an underground tiki bar and an underground apartment. Obviously, the bar was for drinking during Prohibition. The apartment, was it for the wife or was it for some extracurricular activities? Bud allowed friends to use his home to conduct auditions with young, up-and-coming male actors looking to score their first big lead role. Little did they know that they would always be reading for the same part, naked guy laying by pool. There wasn't much activity up at the sign during these years. Enter one Bugsy Siegel, the original gangster himself, a man who could bring his own flash. BYOF. Bugsy hated the name, but he loved a property called the Castillo del Lago, another cool name for a cool house. A 6-story castle that had a killer rooftop where he can place his spotters to keep an eye out on the popo because he was gonna do some naughty stuff inside the house on the lake. Would Bugsy need a friend on the inside? After all, Albert was the eyes and the ears of the canyon. It wouldn't take long before Bugsy's welcome was worn out, that the police had a stakeout at a neighbor's house and shut the operation down. Was Albert their informant? Bye-bye hookers, bye-bye gambling, bye-bye Bugsy. We wouldn't hear about Albert again until 1961, when a catastrophic fire swept through Beechwood Canyon and took out his humble cottage. Albert would appear in the news one last time right before his death. The person asked Albert a few questions. I'm not really sure who wrote them, but Albert, did you ever see any movie stars? No. Did you ever go to a movie studio? No. Did you ever get married? No. There was one more clue that interview revealed. Something gave me the most detail on what Albert really was about. He said this: "There's nothing wrong with Hollywood. You couldn't pay me enough to move away." I think he had figured out a way to live life on his own terms. Maybe he was a father to all of us, teaching us that you don't need to be in the spotlight to find happiness. After all, they are just 9 letters sticking out from the side of a mountain. So she climbed to the top of the H and she jumped. It was a long way to go. The illegal prostitutes and gambling, they had to go. Asked about his job, and all he had to say was, "Never got hurt." Who was Albert really working for?